the Raspberry Pi 400. Hi, David from Tech New Old. I'm quite excited. I've just received this. This is a Raspberry Pi 400. It's the new all-in-one computer from the Raspberry Pi Foundation. Can't wait to get this open and have a look and give you my initial thoughts. Let's take a closer look. Okay, let's get this open. So the specs are reasonably good on this. It's a Raspberry Pi 4, 1.8 gigahertz. It's got 4 gigabytes of RAM, wireless Wi-Fi capabilities. It's got an Ethernet port, gigabyte, 2 HDMI ports. It's got a 40-pin GPI header, 2 USB 3.0 and 1 USB 2.0. Anyway, here's the box. Let's take a closer look. Okay, very nice. Now, this is the kit. So in here should be everything I need to get started. These are sold out, by the way, in the UK. Oh, so there it is. Look at that, very neat. So there's the GPIO head. They've already put the SD card in. It's a 16 gigabyte SanDisk, so it should be reasonable quality. That's at least something which is already done. 2 mini HDMI. That is the power supply. 2 USB 3.0, 1 USB 2.0, gigabit Ethernet, and a T-bar lock, so you can secure this. And that's a nice feeling keyboard. Good quality, but it just feels like that. It just does feel like a keyboard, slightly weighted keyboard. Right, what else is in the box? Let's put this aside. Okay, 1, 2, let's take this out. Take that out. And the big manual. This has got to be the SD adapter if you need to put another OS on. This is the charger. Now look, if you have a USB-C charger already, then I guess you could use that, but just make sure I believe it needs over 2 amp output. And you can see this is a 5 volt 3 amp output, which is probably useful, is because if you do projects with this and you start using the USB ports or even the GPIO, you're going to need that extra power, or your Raspberry Pi 400 is not going to be doing what you expect it to do. This has got to be the mouse. Oh, let's cut this one open. Nothing special here. It's a wired mouse. But again, everything you need to get started. So there's your mouse. Feels of good quality. And a guide, 4th edition. So the latest one. Now these guys are good at documentation. This looks very comprehensive. Everything you need. Obviously I can see straight away Scratch, programming, Python, everything you would expect. Breadboard, GPIO experiments. This looks good quality. So what do I think? Well, I love the Raspberry Pi. I love everything it stands for, what it aims to do. It's a great project. The Raspberry Pi Foundation guys, they're rock stars. The idea of producing an affordable computer which educators can use, schools can afford, and any kid in theory should be able to have access to such a computer. It is just great for It's great for learning. It's great for new skills which are going to be needed for the jobs in the future. So from that perspective, I love it. And I love the idea that they've decided to put the Raspberry Pi into this single computer keyboard unit. It makes a lot of sense. It's tidy. It's the way forward. Now, just to be devil's advocate, if I were to give some suggestions, I can. So I'd argue, why give a wired mouse? Surely they could have given us a wireless one. This, eventually, for a lot of people, is just going to be put into a drawer, and you're going to acquire a wireless mouse, which means extra costs, an extra dongle. I think also they could have supplied the adapter ribbon for the GPIO port, because if you are going to do some of these electronic projects, which in theory are going to be popular in school, and they want to do it at home, you're going to need the breadboard, and you'll need to buy that ribbon to attach it. Now again, this is not an expensive thing to buy, but this is being sold as a kit, ready to go out of the box. So it would have been nice if absolutely everything was there. And I still think for the additional £30, $30, which they're charging you, they should have made the numbers work. All said, look, I love it. It's great. It's great they've done this. And, if I was looking at the keyboard, it feels like good quality. As far as identifiers are concerned, that's the only thing which tells you it's a Raspberry Pi. And I know where the foundation is coming from. They are looking at the 80s. And this is how they used to do computers. This is so big, mind you, that I'm going to have to pan out. There we go. This is my Amstrad CPC 464 from the 80s, an 8-bit computer with an attached tape drive. Anyway, that's enough about that. But this is how we used to do computing. All-in-ones, which you just connected to a monitor, or in most cases a TV. And I've been, I saw a couple of videos, and people are drawing comparisons to the ZX81. I think that's the wrong machine. This is what it most looks like, the ZX Spectrum. And this is a beautiful machine. Albeit the keyboard was not great, it's still iconic in design. And I think that is what we should be comparing the two to, and it works. I prefer the ZX Spectrum. I mean, as you can see, it's slightly elongated, and I would have actually liked to have seen that in the Raspberry Pi 400. Slightly wider, just here. I've just seen the ZX Spectrum. And here we could have had the logo, Raspberry Pi 400, and maybe, given that this is a maker's computer, we could have had a section which you could open up and allowed access to the board to make further upgrades or projects. I know that it's got the GPIO access here, but all said, as far as design is concerned, just to make it look like, and the feel of the computers of old, just that little extension at the back. But it doesn't matter. This is great. This is absolutely great. And in my case, I've decided that it's going to be here in the living room, and I'm going to have to get myself an extra long HDMI cable, and I'm going to do some projects with the kids. So, great. I recommend this. Good design, and I can see this being very popular. And as far as the Raspberry Pi is concerned, we all know it can be a secondary home computer now. So one small difference between the Raspberry Pi 400 and the 4 is the clock speed on the 400 is 1.8 gigahertz compared to the 4, which is at 1.5. That is a subtle but good improvement, which means you are getting an up-to-date computer. Anyway, let's plug it in. Let's see what happens. So the board is flickering. I can see a light boot up there, and this is all very fast. I don't know what you're capturing on screen, and boom, we're in. Wow, that was fast. That's the fastest boot up I've seen on a Raspberry Pi. Okay, I haven't tried the Pi 4. The newest one I've used is the Pi 3, and of course this little fella, the Zero. That was impressive. That certainly means the SD card which they provided you is nice and fast. So when you first boot it up, this is what you're presented with. Welcome to Raspberry Pi. I can zoom in a little bit. Before you start using, there are a few things to set up. Please press Next. United Kingdom, British London. Use English language. If you're in America, you've got the US keyboard set up. Next. What's nice, this fills the entire TV screen. Very impressive. Do I need a password? I don't want a password. Pi user. The default Pi user account currently has the password Raspberry. It is strongly recommended that you change this to a different password that only you know. So I'm going to leave it at Raspberry for now. Should fill the entire screen. Tick the box if your screen has a black border at the edge. You know what? I'm happy with this. I'm just going to leave it as it is. Now just set up your wireless network. I could plug this into Ethernet, which I generally prefer to hardwire things. I'm just going to do that. The operating system and applications will now be checked and updated if necessary. This may involve a large download. Press Next to check and update software, or skip to continue without checking. Right, I'm going to run the update. I'm just going to skip you to when this is all done. Okay, this software update is taking a long time. I'm past 30-40 minutes now. So don't be alarmed when you first set this up and you go through the setup process, and when it prompts you to download the latest installs, it will take some time. Now, of course, you may have a super duper fast internet connection, so that would speed the process up. But I do have fibre at a reasonable speed, and it is taking quite a long time. So just bear that in mind. Nothing's wrong, it's just slow and a big update. Anyway, I'll come back to you when this is all done. Wow, so the system is finally up to date. I guess, as I thought, a quick restart. So let's do that. Must mention again, I was impressed how quickly this reboots up. Let's see if we can do it again. And I think we're coming online now. There you have it. That's pretty fast. So here you have it. The Raspberry Pi OS is really good. There's all your programming languages and your programming editors, all there. Scratch. Your kids will be familiar with that. What else do we have? Office. So you've got your whole Office suite. That's great. You need to write something, do some Excel work. It's all there. I must mention that printing from a Raspberry Pi is not straightforward. You can't just do that out of the box. You need to set something up called cups. There's plenty of videos of that online. But just so there's no surprises, you can't print out of the box. So there you go. Hello. Imagine you've just written, I don't know, an essay. Let's go ahead and print. The options to connect to your home printer are not there. So you have to go through some steps, which I'm no master of, but I intend to set up to get that printer ready. I don't want to save this. What else do we have? Image viewer, you got some games. There's the Minecraft for Raspberry Pi, which is sort of a cut down educational version. You can do some programming inside it. There's your terminal emulator if you want to do some Linux bash. It's all there. Looks what you would expect. It's a soccer game. I'm going to actually check out. Oh, that was quick to load. Let's play this. Let's have a look. Oh, hello. Oh. Yes. Oh, there you go. Right, enough of that. Quit whilst you're up. 1-0. 1-0 to me. I can't believe that. What else can I mention here? Okay, one other thing. This Raspberry Pi is clocked at 1.8 gigahertz. You won't be surprised to see that you can't mess with the performance. It is locked at 1.8, which again is faster than 1.5, which comes in the stock Raspberry Pi 4. So the 1.8 should be absolutely plenty. And of course you have all things like heat, which you need to deal with. And I have seen a teardown of this Raspberry Pi 400, and there's one big old heatsink in there, big piece of metal running more or less the size of the keyboard, so that keeps it nice and cool. And I've seen some tests, it performs quite well. So let's look at the internet. So I've just clicked on that top left hand corner is the Chromium browser. I'm going to go on to the BBC News. Let's have a look. And this is all very fast. I'm impressed with this. There's the BBC News. Well, that loads very nicely. Let's look at some video. Look at some rescued whales in Sri Lanka, which unfortunately beached. That loaded really quickly. It's playing with no problem at all. Oh, this is really sad. Hopefully they push them back into the sea. Why do they beach? Something to do with the sonar? And they just get disorientated? Anyway, I'm sorry, this is kind of macabre, but I hope they do save some. Let's look at YouTube playback. So I'm going to full screen, loading up. I'm not going to sign in just yet. I agree. Sheep discovers how to use a trampoline. There you go. They're nice and safe. Ha! There you go. That's so funny. That's hilarious. Well, let me stick on point. The playback is good. I mean, YouTube's pretty demanding on a machine and its internet connection, but that is great. Let's look at this. Let's look at another one. Dog and cat. Safe stuff. Let's go to full screen. Press play. Well, how sweet. Well, the playback is good. So, what do I think of the Raspberry Pi 400? I really like it. I love the design. Makes a lot of sense to produce a all-in-one computer like this. I think people will really like it. It's a lot less fiddly than the traditional Raspberry Pis which we're used to. Not that it's that difficult, but this all-in-one is just right. And it reminds me of the computers of old back in the 1980s. As I showed before, the Sinclair ZX Spectrum is a good example of an all-in-one, how we used to do things. Going back to the design, I think, you know, it is just a keyboard. They could have made it feel a little bit more like a computer with an extended base at the back, which possibly you could have access to in order to fulfill certain projects. Again, they have the GPI board on the back, so you do have access to what you need if you want to do electronics or server control, robotics. The computer is nice and fast, better experience than I've had on older models, Raspberry Pi 3, 2 and the 0. I haven't tried the 4. I'm sure the 4 has that desktop feel, but this running at 1.8 gigahertz does feel like a little powerhouse. And I've just shown on a big TV, YouTube and BBC News, watching embedded videos had no problem at all. So their promise for 4K playback, even though this is not a 4K TV, I think this unit can deliver. So I really like it, and at $100, £96, I think it actually does offer good value. The kit is complete in that you have an HDMI cable, you have the power, PSU, they give you an SD card with the OS loaded, and as we've seen, it boots really quickly. You've got a wired mouse. I would have liked a wireless mouse, but that's a small want. You get a very good manual which is complete, introduces the user to Scratch, Python and using the GPIO and other projects. It's a good little package. I like it a lot. So this is a thumbs up from Tech New World. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.